Sriman Mahamantra Prabhu, he met the devotees in actually one of my favorite cities in the world, in Vancouver, in Canada in 1980. He took Harinam and then Diksha in 81 and 82 from Satswarup Maharaj. And then he met Srila Gurudeva pretty early back in 1988, and he took reinitiation from him in 2003. So I'm very honored, Prabhu. I believe you were an ex-neighbor. You were in Gopinath Bhavan, but I think you've moved. And the Vyasa is all yours. I think it's 2:11. So what's that? Is it 7:41 there? Yeah.
Yes.
Let's call it 7:45. So you have until 8:15. Please share your memories. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Haribo.
Nam Shrestam Api Sachi Putram Atra Sarupam Tasyagrajam Uparim Matarim Gostavatim Radha Kundam Girivaraho Radhika Madhavasam Prapto Yasya Pratitashi Gurutam Natosmi Tavaivasmi Najivam Natvayam Bina Iti Vikihaya Radhetvam Nayanam Charanantikam. So I first offer my Koti Koti Dandavat Pranam to the lotus feet of Srila Gurudeva, Om Vishnu Padashto Terasata Shishimad Bhaktivedanta Narayana Gosvami Maharaj, and our Rupanuga Guru Varga, and especially the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gaura Govinda Goswami Maharaj, who I also had the good fortune of meeting, and our Shiksha Guru residing here in Vrindavan, Bhaktivedanta Madhusudan Goswami Maharaj. So, very happy to be able to share some significant moments for me, maybe insignificant for others, but very significant moments for me in my spiritual sojourn in this life. I met the devotees in Vancouver back in 1980. And actually, the first meeting with devotees, I think it was 1972. It was around the same time as Ramesh. But I was, not ready at that time. And it took me many years, it took me 8 years of quite intense suffering, actually, before I could give up my independent nature and feeling that, I just remember, I remember crossing the street to avoid the devotees because they always seemed to know better than me what I should be doing. So, but I wasn't humble enough to take their good advice. But then I did have one very profound experience, and I heard them chanting on the street on the corner of Granville and Georgia in downtown Vancouver in 1980. And at that moment, when I heard the chanting, I became stunned, and like the hairs on my body stood on end, tears came to my eyes, and my whole life flashed in front of my face. And basically, I understood that this is what I'd been waiting for. And now I had the chance to fulfill, the purpose of my life. So everything became very ecstatic, and but I was too emotional and too choked up to actually talk with the devotees at that moment. So I walked right past them, went into the library, went straight to a Bhagavad Gita that was in that library, Prabhupada's Gita, and the words just started jumping out at the page. And I felt like I was meeting an old friend. And I read a few verses, and I realized at that point, I didn't even know how to ask the question. So how was I supposed to get the right answer? Because the Bhagavad Gita is questions and answers. So I realized I didn't even really understand how to ask the question. So here I was I've been given the questions and I've been given the answers. That reminds me of one book that was published in later years at ISKCON called Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers. So, and we see our whole philosophy, it's just a series of questions and answers. And actually, maybe the most profound meeting I had with Gurudeva was in Malaysia, at the house of Dr. Param. He was like a world-class surgeon who was hosting Gurudev for many occasions. He came there and was relaxing in Penang. So he only had a small party with him, maybe 3-4 devotees, Brajanath, Madhav Maharaj, maybe 1 or 2 others. And somehow I was there. We attended the Vyas Puja in 2009 in Malaysia. And so I thought, well, this is a good chance for me to go and get some personal association with Gurudev. I'd already taken initiation like 6 years before, but I was always kind of, holding back a little bit. And so anyway, I approached Gurudev that morning. I knew they were going for a morning walk. So I came into Gurudev's association there in the back of Dr. Param's house. He said, "Oh, you've come?" I go, "Yes." He said, "So what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I've been traveling with Padmanabh Maharaj." He said, "Oh, why aren't you with Padmanabh Maharaj then?" And I said, "Well, he had to do something, and I had a few days break, so I thought I would just come up here." And it was kind of like he was definitely chastising. And then he started asking me questions. And, he wanted me to answer in the verses that he had been teaching. But I wasn't maybe privy or close enough to understand all those answers. And I maybe got 50% of what he wanted me to say. Anyway, I ended up feeling like, he was testing me. He was also giving me an incredible amount of mercy. But it just about knocked me out. Basically, I was almost in tears. And then he walked away. And then to go for his morning walk. And Madhav Maharaj kind of came and put his arm around me and he said, "Come on, let's go for the walk." And then he asked me, what had transpired between me and Gurudev. And this is a very personal thing, but I'm sharing just because Gurudev had a way of influencing people that we couldn't even conceive. Who are we and who is he? He's a Nityasiddha Mahabhagavat, eternal parikar of Radha and Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. And who are we? Like, what is our position? Unless when Gurudev left this world, how do we follow in the footsteps of a Mahabhagavat unless we also become a Mahabhagavat? There is no other way to follow. Either you do it or you don't. And it's just like, when Prabhupada left, what did the ISKCON devotees do? They deviated. They're trying to follow, of course. You have to give some credit. You give credit where there's credit due. But why did so many devotees come to Gurudev after Prabhupada? Because they needed some more help. They needed some more answers. They needed someone to lift them out of this Maya samsara. We are all struggling in the material world. And unless we choose to remember Guru and Krishna, we don't have a chance. There is no chance. Just like one time Prabhupada, he was walking with his devotees, and I think it was 1968 or 9 or something. And they passed a garbage can in the park. And there was like a rat in the bottom of the can. And Prabhupada looked in the can and he said, he is doomed. He is doomed. He has no chance of getting out of this can. So he said, in the same way, all living entities in this material world, they're trapped. Unless we get the mercy of a Mahabhagavat. So another time, Gurudev, he was walking on a morning walk, and he came across a stray dog. And that dog looked at Gurudev, and Gurudev looked at him. And Gurudev started crying. So I heard this story. I wasn't on that morning walk, but I heard this story. And Gurudev said, he doesn't have a master. He doesn't have anyone to look after him and guide him and love him. But he said, I am so fortunate. I have a guru that is looking after me. And I want to give that same, and obviously he's giving the same shelter to anyone who wants it, anyone who wants that mercy. We're not qualified. We can't pay back the guru. There's no way that the disciple can pay back the guru. We are trying, but according to our level of sincerity, that's how much we can try. According to the level of our dedication, that's the proof. But who can actually see, who is advanced and who's not? That's one thing Gurudev was teaching us. What is a kanishta? What is a madhyama? What is an uttama? What are their symptoms? So these things we have to know, and we have to actually realize. Otherwise, how we can assist, how we can help Gurudev in his mission? We have to find a shiksha. Just like in ISKCON, when Prabhupada left, then there was, devotees just tried to fend for themselves. And they said, we don't want to hear from Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj. We don't want to hear from Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj. We only want to hear from Srila Prabhupada. But that's not Guru Tattva. See? And ISKCON, they've always struggled with Guru Tattva. I remember discussions going on for 20 years in ISKCON, and they never came to any proper conclusion. What is Guru Tattva? So unless we understand, there's, Guru is one. It's the same message. If it's a real Guru, if it's a real Mahabhagavat, then they're not disagreeing. They're not contradicting each other, even though sometimes it appears like that. Just like Prabhupada came to establish that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But what did Gurudev say? You have to forget that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's a cowherd boy playing in Vrindavan, with his friends, girlfriends, boyfriends, and he's associating with the elders of Vrindavan as a child. So in order for us to understand, really, we have to do bhajan for a long, long time, and we have to continue to be under guidance. And we have to have very, good association, and we have to reject bad association. So anyway, this is a very wonderful occasion that we can remember Gurudev in his centennial year. His glories are unlimited, unfathomable, inconceivable, just like he has all the same amazing qualities as Krishna himself. He's representing Krishna in this world to the fallen souls. So how did I come in contact with such a personality? I don't know. I really don't know. But I started coming to Vrindavan in 1984. I met the devotees in 80, got initiated very quickly, moved into the temple within a couple of days of that experience on the street. And I never left. You know, I was all my life's desires were being fulfilled by being in the association of devotees. But gradually that started to wane in ISKCON. I found I wasn't getting any nourishment from the classes, from the type of association that was there. Maybe too much politics. I wasn't interested in politics. So, you know, I became attracted to Gaura Govinda Maharaj very much. I met him in Orissa, but we're trying to focus on Gurudeva. So Bhaktivedanta Narayana Maharaj. So I first saw Narayana Maharaj, had his darshan in 1988 at a disappearance festival of Srila Prabhupada in ISKCON, Krishna Balaram Mandir. So, you know, they asked Narayana Maharaj to come, and he was the first speaker. He was the honored guest in the assembly of all the, you know, sannyasis, GBCs, Tamal Krishna and Burijan and all these senior disciples that were there of Prabhupada. But they wanted Narayana Maharaj to speak first. It was proper etiquette. So he spoke, and I don't remember exactly what he spoke about, but he said his words, and then he left the temple. And, you know, many devotees accompanied him out the door, and I was one of those persons who walked with him out to the front of the door of Krishna Balaram, and we offered our obeisances, and he walked off. And I didn't really understand. I mean, I didn't recognize him as my guru at that point. I knew he was a great Vaishnava. So again, I was reintroduced to him in 1990. No, before that, I was invited to Keshavaji Gaudiya Mat in 1989 or 90 for Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj's disappearance festival. And there was, you know, maybe 10 or 15 older devotees that I accompanied, you know, from Krishna Balaram over to Mathura. And, you know, Narayana Maharaj was there. It was a very, very beautiful festival and very, very thick atmosphere, you know, in separation from Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj in the temple that he'd established there. And Narayana Maharaj, you know, he hosted everyone. I remember him standing up sort of on a higher, must have been a balcony or something, and he was just always checking and making sure everybody was being attended to, had nice prasad, had a nice experience. And I just remember he was very, you know, paka in his welcoming and making all the devotees feel very happy there. And then then the next time I saw him was a few years later in Mumbai. And I was on my way out of the country, but I was stopped off in Mumbai with this one devotee named Vasu Ghosh. He's in Baroda. He built a big temple in Baroda. So, you know, he came to we were staying together, but he came back to the room and he said, "Oh, Mahamantra, I want to introduce you to Bhaktivedanta Narayana Maharaj. He's staying up on the top floor in the sort of one of the nicest rooms in the hotel there." So I went up with him, and Gurudeva was sitting behind this low desk, little like the kind of place that Prabhupada would be sitting. And we went in, offered obeisances, and it was just him and I. We were sitting in front of Gurudeva, and we stayed for about an hour or an hour and a half. And this was on the occasion when Gurudev was representing Prabhupada in the courts, because Prabhupada's son was trying to legally usurp the ISKCON institution and take it over for himself. He wanted to try to steal all the properties of ISKCON from the devotees. And he had maybe some legal rights. You know how India is. I've been here now for quite a few years. I've seen how India operates. Everything is possible. You know, the rules and regulations they can be bent in quite a few different directions. So this was going on in Bombay for a number of years. And I heard that Gurudev came and went from Mathura to Bombay at least like 4 or 5, 6 times over the years. But finally, Gurudev defeated them on the basis of Shastra. And he said a Gaudiya Vaishnav sannyasi cannot own property. a Gaudiya Vaishnav sannyasi renounces everything. So how that son can take the property when it doesn't even belong to his father? Something like that. So, but on this occasion, you know, I was in Gurudev's audience, you know, for a good hour and a half. And of course, my older friend, senior devotee friend there, Vasugo, she did most of the talking. But I remember Gurudev speaking at length about the fact that he thought that most ISKCON devotees, they weren't really even initiated. He said something to that effect. And I was amazed. I was quite amazed because, you know, I've been in ISKCON for 20 years at that point, or no, 10 years at that point. So, you know, and I thought, well, you know, is he, what's he saying? Like, I couldn't quite fathom it, you know, that maybe the ISKCON devotees, they weren't really properly initiated, or they didn't properly understand, you know, what Prabhupada was giving, or who Prabhupada was. And, you know, there was a lot of unanswered questions that I couldn't even formulate at that point. But I just, you know, patiently was listening and realizing that, you know, he was saying something pretty heavy, but I couldn't quite fathom, you know, where he was coming from at that point. Again, so I wasn't ready. But it intrigued me that he was speaking like this for in so much detail and for such a long period of time. And we went back for 2 or 3 nights in a row, and quite often it was the same topic. So anyway, that was 1991, and it was when the big Muslim Hindu riots were going on, because I remember that happened right after that. So anyway, I didn't see Gurudev again until he arrived in North America on his first, Western tour in 1996. And he was in of course he went to California, and he met, many devotees, so many devotees in California. But then he came up the coast and he landed in Vancouver, and he went to a house of a friend of mine named Tulsi Das. And he was from Mauritius, but he moved to Canada. And he was a disciple of Gopal Krishna, and of course, Maharaj. And when Gopal Krishna Maharaj heard that Narayana Maharaj had come to his disciples' home, then I actually heard that, he made a phone call to Tulsi, and he said, you should not be doing this. You should ask him to leave. And his disciple said, he's a Vaishnav. I'm hosting him in my house. So he couldn't follow his guru. He didn't follow his guru's instruction. So Narayana Maharaj was there for a couple of days, I think, or maybe it might have just been one evening. And then he drove up to Saranagati. And I remember being so infatuated by Gurudev by this time. I became very attracted to him. And another friend of mine named Rupa Raghunath, we were very, very almost like intoxicated by his association. And we were just like talking nonstop about how wonderful he was, all the way from Vancouver up to Saranagati farm, which is about 4-hour drive, because that's where he was going next. So then we stayed up there for 2 days and 2 nights. And Gurudev gave a morning program, evening program, morning, evening, another evening program. It's like 4 or 5 programs he gave. And every man, woman, and child at the farm were coming to hear from him. there was probably 60 or 70 people there. And, you know, he just spoke wonderful, wonderful Harikatha. And it wasn't just about the gopis, you know, like that was his reputation at that time, that, you know, oh, he speaks on very high topics. And so, no, I remember him distinctly. He was speaking about the cowherd boys, but it was all Braj Leela, you know, it was pure nectar. And I remember walking across the field with him at that time, and I said, Maharaj, because I couldn't call him Gurudev because I hadn't really accepted him like that at that point. And so I said, Maharaj, I said, everybody is talking about you. I said, all over the world, devotees are, you know, you're creating like quite a sensation here. And he looked at me. He looked at me and he said, yes, yes. Like he acknowledged it. He acknowledged it very nicely and in a very humble and a very profound way. It was just like, he didn't say anything other than yes, but it was like Krishna was blessing him to do a very special mission in this world. And he conveyed that to me just by saying yes. So I was overjoyed. You know, I was really feeling happy to hear that. And then we walked over, and he was staying in this really old, you know, the farm didn't have much facility in those days. And he was staying in this very old, empty, mobile trailer that was just sort of, you know, sitting on some blocks, you know, on the side of the road. So Rupa Raghunath had a question for him. So we went over to see him. And he was just sitting there in his room by himself, you know, and Madhav Maharaj and Pundari, they were standing outside, and they said, yeah, go on in. You can go on in and talk to him. So we went in and we sat down in front of Gurudev, and Rupa Raghunath, you know, he's a pretty dedicated soul, I must say. But he had this question that he'd been asking his guru. Like, we had the same guru in ISKCON, Srila Satsvarup Das Goswami. You know, and he's an amazing soul also. And he wrote over 100 books about Prabhupada. You know, he loves Prabhupada. And he loves Narayana Maharaj also. So anyway, but Rupa Raghunath had this question, and he was asking Satsvarup Maharaj. He said, what is the origin of the jiva? I don't understand. I want to know more about the origin of the jiva. You know, like Shaimarani compiled a whole book on that topic, right? And, you know, quotes from so many places. So anyway, Satsvarup Maharaj, you know, he tried pacifying Rupa, you know, with different examples that Prabhupada had said. But Rupa wasn't satisfied, and he kept asking. And so Satsvarup Maharaj finally said, I don't want you to ask me this question anymore. You know, stop asking it. And so he wasn't satisfied, because he hadn't heard about the Tatastha. He hadn't heard about the Tatastha Shakti, and he hadn't heard about the conclusions of all our Gaudiya acharyas. So there we were, and he asked Gurudev the question, and Gurudev answered him in about, you know, 2 minutes, you know, something that Satsvarup Maharaj couldn't answer in 1.5 years. So, you know, and when I heard Gurudev give the answer in less than a few minutes, I felt like the whole parampara was coming through his train of thought. I mean, it was pretty ecstatic, you know, to just see that. You know, it was a visual thing. You could actually see the whole parampara was just speaking through the mouth of Bhaktivedanta Narayana Maharaj. So we were pretty convinced at this point that, And Rupa, you know, he went on, he hosted Gurudeva in Mauritius for, I think, 2 weeks, and he spent like $20,000 or something. I mean, he was, you know, he fell, you know, hook, line, and sinker into Gurudeva Sangha. And, you know, he got, you know, he got the mercy. So anyway, so that was another meeting with Gurudev in Saranagati. And then, you know, it was a very short visit and he left. That was 1996. Then I was coming to Vrindavan almost every year for at least like 2 to 6 months. And that's from the time like 1984, 85. So I had lots of chance. I had lots of opportunities to meet Gurudev. And, but, you know, I was a little wishy-washy, I guess you could call me. But anyway, you know, I wasn't quite certain, you know, that this is the direction I wanted to go. I was quite attached to being in ISKCON. ISKCON had, you know, nourished me for so many years. And I had some very profound experiences in ISKCON also. So I didn't want to just give that up. But, you know, there was one funny thing. Around 2000, I was in Vrindavan, and there was one, I won't mention his name, but, you know, he was a very senior devotee of Prabhupada. And he was giving class in Prabhupada's room. And there was only 6 people in the room. Yeah, 6 of us. And on the way to that class, I met 2 or 3 of them. And they all said, yeah, we're quite attracted to Narayana Maharaj. Like, but we're here. We're still in ISKCON, but we're quite attracted to Narayana Maharaj. So that was the feeling of those 6 people listening to the class. So the class was about humility, and he was about it.
Prabhu, which year was that?
That was 2000.
Okay.
And the class was about humility, and it was a Bhagavad Gita verse. And this devotee was, you know, speaking, you know, about humility. So at the end of the class, he asked for questions, which is quite common in ISKCON. So I raised my hand. I said, well, I've got a comment. I don't have a question, but I just read something very beautiful about humility, and it was about something I'd read in PureBhakti.Tv, the book about Gurudeva and Prabhupada being so close. And so there was one example. I actually forget the example now, but it was showing, you know, the humility of Srila Prabhupada. Oh yeah, he wasn't going to move into the Keshaviji Gaudiya Mat because he wasn't a brahmachari or a sannyasi. So he was just living in a little room outside near Vishram Ghat. And Gurudev just found him there one morning and invited him to come and live in the temple. That's how humble Prabhupada was. He wouldn't even live in the temple. So I quoted that example. That devotee said, where did you get this story? And I said, well, I just read this book called PureBhakti. He said, that's one of Narayana Maharaj's books. And I said, yes, I think it is. It is. And he said, Narayana Maharaj doesn't know Prabhupada. He said, I know Prabhupada. I was with Prabhupada in 1966 in New York City. He doesn't know Prabhupada. I know Prabhupada. And most of the devotees in the room were either initiated or very attracted to Narayana Maharaj. But nobody said anything, you know. So anyway, that just sort of convinced that I think that was the year that I sort of formally gave up, you know, on ISKCON, because they just didn't seem to have the respect that was required, you know, to appreciate other exalted personalities. And, you know, so that you know, that was just one of many things that took place, but, you know, that just stands out. So in 2000, I came back from India, and I heard that Narayana Maharaj was giving a program in Badger, and my flight just happened to be transiting through LA, and I just happened to meet somebody from London, I think. I can't remember who it was, one British devotee, had just arrived in the LAX airport. And we started talking. I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to Badger, or I'm going to see Narayana Maharaj." And I was on my way to Vancouver in 2 hours. But I changed my ticket. I went over and they said, "Yeah, you can change your ticket, no problem." So I accompanied this wonderful devotee who brought me to the Association of Narayana Maharaj again. And I spent, 10 days or a week or however long it was there in Badger, lived in a tent, in a beautiful grassy field, and went to bhajans and Harikatha every night. And, I could see the effect that Narayana Maharaj was having on all the devotees, and especially that festival. I remember Shaima Rani, she was just effulgent, she was just glowing and just inspiring, just speaking the glories of Gurudeva to everyone, and that she could. But I was in a bit of a condition at that point. I thought I was experiencing jet lag, but actually I had jaundice, and that, like, really bad jaundice. So I got something from that festival. Of course, I was, in the vicinity of a Mahabhagavat, but, I was in no condition to participate in a, full way. But I guess it was some kind of mercy, right? When the mercy comes, it doesn't always come in an easy, digestible form. So 2003, I came back. It might have been my third Badger festival. Maybe it was the second one. I can't remember. And anyway, I was ready for initiation. Finally, finally, I got initiated by Gurudeva. And we're all sitting in the room. And there's probably about 15 or 20 of us in the room. And then he's already explained the mantra, like one Prabhu was saying earlier. And then, it's not Ram, Sita Ram, or, it's Radha Raman, and everything is, Rasik, and it's all about Vrindavan, Rajendra Nandan, Shama Sundar in Vrindavan. So, and then, he's passing out the Gayatri, or the, the Diksha mantras, and it's written on pieces of paper. And of course, I didn't need one because I've already been chanting for 20 years. But I heard the mantra from him, and I definitely felt the benefit, the incredible Shakti surcharge that came, by hearing from his lotus mouth. But for the ones that didn't know the mantra, he was, it was written on pieces of paper. So he was passing these pieces of paper out. And there was someone, I was sitting near the front, and there was someone behind me. So he was reaching out over his desk to give that piece of paper to this other devotee. And I thought, well, I can help him, and I'll take the paper from him and pass it over, behind me. And he pulled the paper back. As soon as my hand started reaching out, he pulled the paper back, and he looked at me with such a glare that it was like, the primal chastisement. Like, I'd never been chastised before like that. Like, it was just by a glance. Talk about sidelong glances. But I mean, it went right to my heart, and it just kind of like liberated me. Because of course you feel bad at the moment, but that finally here's somebody that can help me. See, because I was in ISKCON for 20 years and nobody ever chastised me. Nobody ever had the guts to chastise me, or they didn't have the spiritual stature, whatever. But it's like, if you don't get chastised by the guru, how do you make advancement? See, like Prabhupada used to say like that. He said, "Forgive me for chastising you, but I'm your guru. It's my duty to do this." he had to speak like this, because most of us, we can't even take the chastisement. See, of course, we don't want 24/7 chastisement either, but the more chastised you get, in one sense, the better off you may be, if you can at least learn from those chastisements. Of course, you have to apply what the guru is saying, or take the message, take the teaching that he's giving by that chastisement. Otherwise, what use is it? How am I doing for time?
Prabhu, we're 5 minutes over, but I was so engrossed by what you were saying, I was just about to say, do you need a bit more time? But we're 5 minutes over.
would love it. I would actually love it, because I had about 4 or 5 little note pieces of paper here. I only got through one of them, and then I just took off speaking. So if I could bring.
Prabhu, it sounds like you could give a whole nother. You could do a continuation, actually. Do you want to come back on?
When?
We can arrange that afterwards, but in, say, 2 weeks' time.
In 2 weeks, I'll be in Nepal, because I'm getting kicked out of India, like all the rest of us guys that have locked down here for the last 2 years.
Oh, yeah. Because how much more time do you need? Because, I mean, it sounds like you could do a whole nother 30, 40 minutes.
I would be happy to, Prabhu. I would be happy.
I can't do that now, but I can't personally do that now. I just don't have.
Let's stick to the schedule. And I think you said you had one more person after this, right?
No, we're finished now.
Oh, this is the last. Okay.
Yeah, then we're having kirtan, but well, after Nepal, where are you going after Nepal?
So then I'm hoping to get a 30-day visa to come back to India.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And then I'm ready to go back to Canada for a few months and, do some things.
So we definitely should have a continuation, I think.
Well, okay. I'm happy if I want to thank Karuna Mai, from Canada. She, she's there, rubbing shoulders with the British Yatra, and
yeah, she's down the road from me.
Yeah, she's getting some special mercy. She's always been a bright light for me. I've always liked her, and she joined around the same time when I was preaching on the island. So we have kind of a connection, So
I'm going to ask Ujjwala Prem to coordinate with Karuna Mai to bring you back on, because I've taken lots of notes from what you've said. There's so much richness and depth from what you're saying. I think the devotees would relish a part 2.
Okay, I'm happy. And if you've heard enough tonight, you can cut me off anytime.
Would you like to give us a last one, or do you want to end up did you want to end up on chastisement? Which is good. I love the chastisement stuff. That was fantastic.
The chastisement thing can, everyone can speak about that, because, Gurudeva was very liberal with his chastisements.
Yeah, but my experience, I really relate to, because you talked earlier about how at Dr. Param's place, he really pushed your buttons and you were nearly in tears. And then you talked about the glance. But my experience also of his chastisement was that, although I always lived kind of in fear of it, because people talked about it, and I thought, well, other people could enjoy that. I'm not really up for that. But when he did ultimately chastise me, I noticed how the mercy went with it. It's like somehow within you, he gave you the inner knowing to know it was okay and to accept it. So he gave you, he gave you the medicine. He gave you the ability to take the medicine somehow. I don't know how that works, but it was amazing. Amazing.
Well, they say that, you shouldn't really chastise anybody unless you are a guru.
Yeah, it's true.
So that mercy it's built in, it's a built-in feature of that position.
Yes, but also that 1988 meeting, I'm sure I've heard about this 1988 meeting in Krishna Balaram, when Gurudeva came for Prabhupada's disappearance day, and you said you couldn't remember what he talked about. I'm sure it's the same meeting that another senior Prabhupada disciple who didn't come to Gurudev told me about, that meeting where Srila Gurudev told the devotees there, you've done so much seva for your Prabhupada, now it's time to do sadhana. And he was telling everybody to go more internally. And this person I was speaking to heard it like he was criticizing Prabhupada, but he was doing nothing of the sort. It was like how you hear something is somehow due to your own covering, your own illusion. I was thinking, wow, Gurudev came there, he gave you the absolute medicine, and you completely misunderstood everything he had said. I'm sure it was that meeting.
Yeah, it just shows you like how the pure devotee, he's hidden. He's quite hidden, and it's a secret thing. It's Krishna, what is it? There's that verse in Bhagavad Gita that says that people are bewildered by the deluding potency of the material world. They're deluded. They can't recognize me, who am beyond this world and completely independent from it. So in the same way, Yoga Maya arranges like that. I mean, there's many examples in Krishna Lila of things being like that, completely twisted. The demons not demons, but but the non-devotee thinks in one way, and everyone's hearing according to their adhikar.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's how it works.
All right, Prabhu. So we'll make an arrangement for you to come back, because I can feel you've got a whole nother. We'll give you an extended slot coming back, and we'll arrange that through the Karuna Maya. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to possibly repay the Guru, but I mean, we have to keep trying. What else have we got? It's if we don't, and by what you're doing, Prabhu, you're facilitating other devotees and trying to increase our greed and increase our opportunity for any kind of service. I mean, I will just end. Let me just end with one quick pastime. In 2010, it was the Italian festival in that place near north of Pisa, and Gurudev. Festival had ended. Gurudev stayed 2 or 3 days after the festival, and all the devotees had left. I mean, except for just maybe like 20, 30 people left. Out of 1,000. And so I heard, Gurudev's having a massage in his room at 4 o'clock. So, I went there at 4. And there was this Indian devotee at the door, and he didn't want to let me in. He really didn't want to let me in. And massage had already started. But I basically, something in me said, I want to massage my Gurudev. I have to massage this is really important for me, So I basically had to push my way through this devotee. And I'm very, very glad I did that, even though it felt really bad at the time. I really didn't like doing that, but I got into the room, feeling like a wrestler or something, And then when I saw the atmosphere, my heart just melted, and one devotee was Brajanath, I think, was massaging Gurudev's head. There was one devotee on Gurudev's right arm. There's another devotee on Gurudev's left arm. And there was another devotee on Gurudev's left leg. And then the right leg was, and I just bowed down and started massaging his right foot and leg. And I felt like I was in the Kunj. Like the whole atmosphere just became so transcendental and so soft and so amazing. And, Gurudev had his eyes closed, and he was, who knows where he was, But the energy and the ambience of that room, and, Sajjan Maharaj was there, Madhav Maharaj, they were having a little tiff, back and forth, like I guess they had sort of a little habit of doing that kind of thing. And, different sort of things were going on one level. But on another level, it was like the Kunj, and it was just so refreshing and so otherworldly, and it's like nobody had to tell me what to do. I just sort of knew what to do, and everything was kind of like automatic pilot, and everything was just unfolding. And it was a special moment for me and with Gurudev. And I know I'm sure many devotees have had opportunity of massaging, but that was very special. And when I came out, Padmanabh Maharaj was there outside the room, and I just told him where I'd been, and he said, "Put your hands on my head." So I put my hand on Padmanabh Maharaj's head, and he was in ecstasy also. So anyway, yeah, we've had our moments.
Like a pastime from Raghunath Das Goswami. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you. We'll see you soon. Good luck with going to Nepal. Good luck with your trip. And we'll arrange something soon. I'm really looking forward to having you back. Do take a note of where you left off so you can kind of like start off on the chastisement bit and work your way on to the next stories.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you for all your extended mercy that you're giving to so many.
Haribol. Dandavat pranams. Haribol.
Vanchakalpatuvasya Kupasindhuvya Vicha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha.